Welcome back. We are now previewing UFC 154. Thank you again for joining us. My name is Lucky Robert Curtis. I am the professional idiot, and my sidekick, as always, is the idiot savant of mixed martial arts, the #1 Sakara fan on the planet, Derek Langhorn.
Hello, everybody. How's it going?
All right, I want to say Longhorn. I think it's more exciting for the ladies. Before we get started, we'd like to challenge our listeners and our dear friends on WhatCulture.com and on MMAshare.com. Help us name this thing. So we threw that out to our buddies over there at MMA Share, and we did get some funny ones. Some of the highlights include Victorious Secret by Pride FC fan, Sakuraba by Thunder Tiger. That's kind of an inside joke. The #1 Saku fan, my name's Rob. Getting Lucky with Rob, this about Rob Danum, and he had another one, The Manly Podcast of Manly Things. Kind of like that one. Although I kind of feel like if you might feel like you were listening to a podcast about lumberjacking.
Well, I look like a lumberjack, so.
You certainly do. Lucky in the Brain by Waftist. Unlucky Strike by Tough Guy. Punch Drunk Banter by Jupa. I had my own silly contribution, The Toctagon.
That is silly.
So you can see, we don't have much to work with, so please help us come up with a name. We feel like as soon as we get a name, we'll instantly be invited over to Dana White's for a nice Sunday brunch. So UFC 154 in Montreal, Canada. They've had slow ticket sales, and I think that's a result of the canceling the 151 as well as all of these cards being submarined by a spat of injuries.
Personally, their last card in Canada was in Calgary. There were so many injuries in it, it kind of made the event pretty lackluster, to be honest. I think a lot of people were holding out their ticket buys until they found out that all the fights that were scheduled were actually going to happen.
Those Canadians are frugal, but they're loyal. I'm sure they'll turn out. They've got 8 Canadians on the card. That's like the entire population of Saskatchewan. I'm sure we're going to get emails about that one. All right. I've got a new segment for our show. It's our made-up word. I'm going to make up a word to describe what we're going to talk about for the entire podcast. And today's made-up word is ginormous, because this card is huge. There are 13 fights on this card. UFC 2 had more fights.
Really?
15 fights.
15 fights?
Yeah, in a 16-man tournament way back in 1994. Enormous. So 18 years. This is the biggest event since UFC 2.
You talked about UFC 2. Actually, this week, Monday, was actually the 19th anniversary of UFC 1. So 19 years on Monday, on November 12th, 1993, McNichols Sports Arena, Denver, Colorado. It's been 19 years.
Let's get started on the FX card. We've got 4 fights here. The first one is featherweight, 145 pounds. Steven Siler, 21-9 on a 3-fight winning streak versus Darren Elkins, 14-2, also on a 3-fight win streak. This might be the best fight on the under card. What do you think?
I agree. I think it's actually a pretty important fight. Siler and Elkins both, as you said, coming off 3 wins, but Darren Elkins has not looked great in those 3 wins. I mean, if anybody saw the Diego Browndown fight at 146, he got beat up bad in the first round. I mean, it could have been stopped multiple times. He rallied back for the victory by, honestly, very close decision. And then his Omagawa fight, 131, was extremely controversial. I personally thought Omagawa won hands down. Omagawa got his win bonus after the fight. He did well against Tietran Zhang, but Zhang, in my opinion, as he showed last week, is not UFC caliber. Siler is coming off 3 awesome wins. His win against Cole Miller was extremely impressive. He looked absolutely awesome in that fight. When I first heard of that fight, I gave Siler no chance, to be honest. Cole Miller is, in my opinion, a pretty great fighter and up there in the rankings, and Siler absolutely beat him really impressively.
Who do you think wins this fight?
Siler for sure.
Next fight, bantamweight, 135, Ivan Menjivar, 24-9 on a 1-fight losing streak versus Azamat Gashimov, 8-1, a 2-fight win streak, and this is Azamat's debut. I just want to say Hazmat every time I see this guy's name. What do you think about the fight?
Personally, I don't know much about Gashimov. He definitely hasn't fought any real competition. He hasn't beaten anybody of note. Ivan Menjivar is one of the most experienced fighters. He has fought all the way up at welterweight. Now he's down at bantamweight. The guy is very well-rounded. It's going to show in this fight. Ivan Menjivar takes this by decision.
Next fight, jumping up to welterweight, 170, Matthew Riddle, 10-3 with 1 no contest on a 2-fight win streak versus John McGuire, 18-4 off of a 1-fight losing streak. Matthew Riddle's nickname is Deep Waters, but I think it should actually be Bong Tokes. What do you...
I think so too. I mean, he does have a medical marijuana license from Nevada. Yeah, he got popped in his last fight. Didn't get a very long suspension, unlike the infamous Nick Diaz suspension. Matt Riddle, extremely durable, very game. He gets really reckless, though. Loves to brawl. Personally, I think that John McGuire will be able to take advantage of his superior grappling. I think he can take him down and either grind out a decision or get a late submission. John McGuire's looked great against Justin Edwards and especially DeMarcus Johnson, and I think Matt Riddle's going to lose this fight.
He has fought exclusively in the UFC, not a single fight outside of it. So he has fought fairly stiff competition, I guess you could say, compared to most fighters. But John McGuire, other than a loss to John Hathaway, and for those MMA guys, you know John Hathaway's legit, he would be on a 7-fight win streak, including, as you said, DeMarcus Johnson, Justin Edwards. I have John McGuire on this one too. Last fight on the FX undercard, Antonio Carvalho versus Rodrigo Dam. What do you think about this fight? Oh, sorry. Carvalho 14-5, 1-fight win streak. Rodrigo Dam 10-5, 1-fight win streak.
Rodrigo Dam, incredible jiu-jitsu. He's an incredible grappler. The only reason he was forced out of Tough Brazil, and in my opinion, probably he would have won that. Doctor's orders, kidneys were failing because he cut too much weight too fast. I personally thought Dam was the favorite going into that tough season. The only thing about Dam, though, is we have seen he has chin problems. He really has chin problems. I feel as though if Carvalho can land that big punch, as Carvalho's last fight was a knockout against one of my favorite rousing prospects in Daniel Pineda. If Carvalho can land that big punch, he's going to knock him out, and he will knock him out quick. If Rodrigo Dam can take this fight to the mat, Antonio Carvalho is a black belt, but not on Rodrigo Dam's level. Rodrigo Dam will take him down and probably submit him in the first round. But Carvalho definitely has a chance to knock him out. I think this fight is only going one round. I say Rodrigo Dam by submission.
To your point, Rodrigo Dam has been TKO'd twice in his 2 losses in his last 3 fights. So he's really 1 win, 2 losses with 2 TKOs. And on the other side, Carvalho has 7 wins by knockout. So half of his wins come from punching power. You know what? There's 2 Brazilians on this card, and they're not doing them any favor making them fight in Canada in November. You say Rodrigo Dam, I'm going to say Carvalho. Let's move to the Facebook card. The first fight, lightweight, Sam Stout, 18-7, 1 no contest, 1-fight win streak, versus John Makdessi, 11-2, on a 2-fight losing streak. This is the only fight on the card where 2 Canadians face each other.
I love this fight. I love both these guys, to be honest. Sam Stout has just had a really on-again, off-again UFC career. He's win, lose, win, lose. His only real impressive victory was that KO of Vito Edwards at UFC 131. Put him completely out with that left hook. John Makdessi showed a lot of promise, but he has shown up pretty out of shape in his last 2 fights. He lost 2 in a row. In my opinion, he's fighting for his UFC contract.
He missed weight last fight against Anthony Njokuani.
I thought John Makdessi was going to win that fight. Anthony Njokuani is one of my favorite fighters, to be honest. But Anthony Njokuani just beat him to the punch and took him out. John Makdessi was just not in shape. John is definitely the superior striker. His Taekwondo background, Sam Stout, is mainly just a boxer. If John Makdessi can maintain the outside, land his kicks, and not let Stout land his punches, he'll probably take this by decision, if he's in shape, that is, and keep the pace up. Stout has too good of a chin to be knocked out by Makdessi. I mean, Sam Stout has always shown a great chin. Taking John Makdessi by decision.
Sam Stout is one of these fighters, like you said, is on again, off again, and there's another fighter that he shares this with on the same card, and that's Mark Hominick. Both of these guys have coached by Sean Tompkins.
Both by Sean Tompkins, yeah. And Sean Tompkins recently passed, unfortunately.
In 2011, and since then, both of these fighters haven't really looked the same.
He's shown a problem with finding his range in his fights, so I just think John Makdessi will be able to find his range and beat him to the punch and the kick. So
next fight, another lightweight fight. Mark Bocek, 11-4, 2-fight win streak versus Rafael dos Anjos, 17-6. Also on a 2-fight win streak. This is a good fight.
I love this fight. I'm going Mark Bocek all the way. In my opinion, he's one of the most underrated fighters at lightweight.
You love a lot of fighters. Every time we do a fight, this is my favorite fighter. There's a lot of love with Derek.
I do. I get really emotionally invested in some fighters. So, but Mark Bocek, his only losses have been to Benson Henderson, Jim Miller, Mac Danzig, and Frankie Edgar. Besides Mac Danzig, those are all extremely high-level talent. Dos Anjos can win this fight by submission because Bocek hasn't fought anybody with submission skills with Dos Anjos. I'm guessing Bocek, working at TriStar, will be able to fend them off. I'm guessing Bocek is going to take this by decision. He's going to beat him up. Probably going to be a pretty boring fight for the average fan, but pretty sure he'll he'll take this by decision.
I am also going to go with Bocek just because I would never pick a Brazilian fighting in the snowy north in November. It doesn't have to make sense. These are my rules. This is how I live my life. So mark Bocek for both of us. We're now going to the next fight on the Facebook card, the heaviest fight at light heavyweight. Cyril Diabate, 18-8-1 on a one-fight win streak versus Chad Griggs, 11-2, making his light heavyweight debut.
Chad Griggs with the mutton chops. At first, I thought I was going to pick Chad Griggs, but as I really started to think about it, Diabate is the much more technical striker. Long limbs. He has one of the longest reaches in the UFC at 81.5 inches. Chad Griggs definitely has more power than Cyril Diabate, and he'll also be the bigger man on fight night. Personally, I think Diabate will stay on the outside and pick him apart. Diabate has never really shown chin issues in his past. I don't even think he's ever been knocked out. So if Chad Griggs lands that big punch, I'm not really sure how Diabate will take it, but I'm pretty sure he can take it fine. I love me some Chad Griggs. I love those mutton chops, but I'm going to have to go with Cyril Diabate. And I'm guessing it'll be a decision in a mostly kickboxing match. It's probably going to be a pretty good fight.
Diabate's really only shown a weakness towards submissions. I'll go with Diabate on this one too. Last fight on the Facebook card, middleweight, Patrick Cote, 17-8 on a one-fight losing streak, and then Alessio Sakara, 15-9, one no contest on a two-fight losing streak. There are 4 guys, I think, on this card that are fighting for a spot, and Alessio Sakara, I think, is one of them.
I also think Patrick Cote is fighting for his job. He may have done well in his last fight against Kins Kung, but honestly, Cote is 4-8 in the UFC, and he lost his last fight against Kung. I mean, he looked good, but Sakara is coming off 2 consecutive losses as well. Cote being 4-8 in the UFC, if he loses his next fight, I mean, 4-9 in the UFC, he's, in my opinion, definitely going to get cut. But I don't think he's going to lose this fight. I think Patrick Cote will take this. Sakara has shown massive chin problems in the past. Brian Stann knocked him out pretty easily. Lieben knocked him out. Houston Alexander knocked him out. Although they are all of them are power punchers, but I still see it. I still see it going Cote's way because Cote has always shown great power.
And Cote has a chin like Mark Hunt.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, Cote, in my opinion, he looked great against Lee. He definitely lost that fight, but I thought he looked great. Definitely, I think Cote will win this by knockout. I'm going to go with the second round. Cote has more power than Alessio Sakara and is a lot more well-rounded in the striking game. Alessio Sakara is mainly just a boxer. Cote has big power in his hands and some good kicks. I'm going with Cote in this one by knockout.
So let's go to the main card. The first fight is a featherweight fight. Mark Hominick, 20-11 with a 3-fight losing streak versus Pablo Garza, 11-3 on a 2-fight losing streak. I'm quite frankly surprised that this fight made it on the main card. It's just because Mark Hominick is a popular Canadian.
Absolutely. Mark Hominick is the favorite in this fight. Minus 320. Pablo Garza, the underdog at plus 260. In my opinion, Pablo Garza is pretty overrated. I don't know why people are so high on him. He had 2 amazing wins. That knockout against Fredson Paschal, which was a flying knee victory, and that Yves Javoin awesome flying triangle choke. But he looked completely outclassed against Dennis Bermudez and Dustin Poirier. Mark Hominick is still, in my opinion, a top-level featherweight, but he needs to fight smarter, and there's that big question of his chin. He looked like he had some chin problems in the Eddie Yagan fight. A lot of people thought that Chan Sung Jung might have just been a fluke.
When you get knocked out in 7 seconds, you've got chin problems. I'm sorry.
He did rush into that punch. It can happen to the best of them. I think that Eddie Yagan fight really showed that his chin is deteriorating. Eddie Yagan dropped him multiple times. I think he can win this fight. Mark Hominick can win this fight, but he has to fight smart. He needs to be technical. I mean, if you watched his Eddie Yagan fight, and he let Eddie Yagan land those big haymakers, which dropped him. He just didn't fight smart. He didn't fight technical. Honestly, Mark Hominick is probably one of the most technical strikers all around in the UFC. If Mark Hominick fights smart, uses his technical striking, I think he can take this fight pretty easily by decision, or maybe a late knockout.
I agree with you that I think Hominick is one of the more technical strikers in the featherweight division. Obviously, I think Aldo, in every regard, is superior, technically in particular. Now, he went to war with Jose Aldo and probably gave Aldo what I think was his toughest test.
Absolutely.
Everything just sort of coalesced for Hominick at that moment. That was in April of 2011. His next fight was in December after his good friend and coach Sean Tompkins passed away. And that's when he got knocked out in 7 seconds. And against Eddie Yagan, again, not a good performance. I really think that him losing his coach seriously affected his mental preparation for his fights. Will that continue? I have no idea. But if Mark Hominick loses his fight, I think he's out of the UFC. And that would be a huge tragedy in a way, because he's got, like you said, quite a bit of talent.
He's a fun fighter to watch, for sure.
For whatever reason, and he's a warrior. I mean, when he was fighting with that melon-sized hematoma on his head, I was simultaneously in awe and at the same time grossed out a little bit. But I think he wins this fight. He's got to win this.
Well, he has to. He has to. And Pablo Garza, as I said before, I don't think he's UFC caliber. He has long limbs, but he's not very talented, not very athletic. I personally think he just got gifted. I mean, he just did really well in those 2 fights, and everybody got really high on him. Personally, I just don't think he's as good as a lot of people are saying.
Everybody got really high on him? Are we talking about Matthew Riddle? He's on the undercard, dude. Let's move on. I think from a storyline perspective, Mark Hominick returning to Canada, getting a nice victory, resetting his career, I think it's all in place for him. Next fight at middleweight, Nick Ring, 13-1, 1-fight win streak, versus Costa Philippou, 11-2 with 1 no contest on a 4-fight win streak.
Costa Philippou is the favorite in this fight, minus 245. Nick Ring, plus 205. I love Costa Philippou. I know I'm saying I love a lot of these fighters, but Costa Philippou's definitely up there. Costa Philippou loves to bang. Nick Ring, pretty well-rounded fighter, pretty good everywhere. He's got power in his hands. I mean, his wrestling's okay, and his submissions are all right. Actually, Nick Ring is starting training at TriStar for this fight, which is an interesting little tidbit. Who knows how that will affect him, but those are some top-level guys over there. I'm not sure if they have any real good middleweights fighting over there, but I'm sure training with GSP will be enough. Costa, big power puncher, looked amazing in his last few fights. I mean, they both have actually common opponents, Court McGee, Ricky Fukuda. Costa beat them both much more impressive in Ring, though. In Ring has been gifted decisions a lot in his past fights. I think Court McGee takes this probably by decision, which it'll be...
And by Court McGee, you mean Costa Philippou.
Oh, yeah, Costa Philippou. Costa, I think he has to put the pressure on Nick Ring, use his superior boxing skills, because he is a great boxer. He's got to bully him, keep his pace up, and I think he'll take a really, really dominant decision, or maybe a TKO. Probably a decision.
I'm going to go with Costa on this one. I don't find this fight particularly intriguing. I don't know if it should be on the main card. Yeah, I would have put Bocek and Dos Anjos on here before these guys.
Yeah, that's an important fight.
Let's move to the next one. Middleweight 185, Francis Carmont versus 19-7 on an 8-fight winning streak. Tom Lawler, 8-4, 1-fight win streak. I think this one's kind of an obvious one.
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been saying this a lot, but seriously,
he's my favorite fighter of all time.
Tom Lawler is honestly up there for me with Sakara. His humor is straight up my alley. I love him. His ring entrances, his weigh-ins, especially his Andy Anderson costume. That was absolutely hilarious. The Just Bleed tribute where he painted Just Bleed on his chest and weighed in. That shit makes me laugh so hard. Personally, Francis Carmont is going to take him out. Francis Carmont, by the way, the favorite, minus 275. Tom Lawler, plus 235. I don't know what to say. I mean, Francis Carmont takes this easily. Carmont has looked unstoppable in his starting training at TriStar. Wrestling incredible, striking rapidly improving, and he's a huge, huge middleweight.
Yeah, 6'3", 78-inch reach. That's pretty damn big.
His last 3 dominant victories were in the UFC, and he's improved leaps and bounds in each one. In my opinion, Tom Lawler is being fed to Carmont in this fight. I think they're trying to raise up a new star, and I think it's going to happen. I think Limitless Francis Carmont definitely takes this fight, probably by decision or submission, and I think this fight is actually a mismatch. I don't think the odds makers really do this justice. I really think Francis Carmont is a huge, huge favorite. I feel bad saying it, but Tom Lawler really stands no chance in my opinion.
I also have Carmont winning. I think Lawler's got a little bit better chance than what you think. But Carmont, I think he gets it. Next fight, welterweight Martin Kampmann, 20-5, 3-fight win streak versus... I'm almost at tears because this is a fellow Oklahoma State alumni from my own hometown. I was born in Stillwater. Johnny Big Rig Hendricks, 13-1 on a 4-fight win streak. Love me some Johnny Hendricks. Love, love, love.
I'm not as high on Johnny Hendricks as you are, but...
I'm hanging up the call. Sorry.
Johnny Hendricks is the favorite, minus 145. Martin Kampmann, plus 125. Very close. Very close odds in this one. Martin Kampmann is the superior striker. Johnny Hendricks has that big left hook, and he has incredible wrestling. One thing in this fight that is interesting is whether or not Martin Kampmann will be pulled into a brawl. Most notably in his fight against Paul Daly, he just started brawling with Daly and got knocked out. Kampmann has shown great resilience, but not a very good chin. He recovers well, but he gets dropped easily. I personally think that Kampmann needs to stay on the outside, pick him apart, and land big punches and kicks, and maybe a couple knees if they do get into close range. Johnny Hendricks has shown a reliance on his big left hand, especially in his last fight. If Kampmann fights smart, which he usually doesn't, but if he doesn't get lulled into a brawl and that doesn't let that left hand hit him, I think he can take this. But if Johnny can revert back to his wrestling, take him down, watch out for Kampmann's underrated submission game, I think he can grind out a decision. I'm going with Kampmann in this one. I think he wins this by TKO, but Johnny can end a fight with one punch, and he also can win a decision by ground and pound, which he has great ground and pound. I'm going Kampmann in this fight because you can never count Kampmann out. Kampmann is somebody that always finds a way to win, and I'm going with the underdog here in Martin Kampmann.
Well, I disagree. And I think that Kampmann doesn't always find a way to win. And I'm going to point to the Jake Shields fight. Jake Shields is the most chinny, top-level welterweight. In that third round, it looked like Jake Shields was gassed and on his last legs. Had Kampmann waded in, I really think had he thrown caution to the wind, he would have won that fight. And like you said, he's been pulled into stupid game plans with other fighters. But I think you're right. If he does stay on the outside and use a very quick leg kick and soften up that lead leg, I think that'll slow down Hendricks, particularly from the wrestling. But I'm an Oklahoma State alumni. I'm going to go with my fellow Cowboy and say Johnny Hendricks gets him down, grinds him out, and pulls out a decision victory. All right, so here comes the big fight.
Oh, yes.
Welterweight champion George Rush St Pierre, 22-2 with a 9-fight win streak, versus interim welterweight champion Carlos Condit, 28-5 with a 5-fight win streak. GSP is coming off of a 560-plus day layoff. He's fighting on a surgically repaired ACL. With all of that being said, I know you're a huge GSP fan. How do you see the fight?
I'm going with George St Pierre all the way. George St Pierre is the favorite in this, minus 340. Carlos Condit, plus 280. As you said, the big question is, will we see the same GSP? Apparently, from all the people training with him, he looks amazing. George St Pierre, personally, he says himself that he is 100%. He's been training with John Danaher, who is an incredible submission artist. Condit has been training with Cote, but I'd say John Danaher is better than Cote personally. GSP has also been training with the Thai Muay Thai champion, Kru Lam Songkram. I don't know if anybody's seen the primetime show, but this guy is ridiculous. GSP says he's 100%, but we definitely will not know until he gets in. Personally, I think GSP can win this fight easily. If he fights smart like he usually does, I mean, he's the most cerebral fighter in MMA. If he counters Carlos's kicks with takedowns, mixes up his strikes, doesn't get bullied, he can take him down and win an easy unanimous decision victory. Basically, anybody that kicks George St Pierre, if you go for a kick on George St Pierre, especially leg kicks, that's just giving him a takedown. He'll get it no matter what. That's
if he's still the same George St Pierre. Now, they're all of the stats are out there, like his takedown defense, his takedown efficiency, #1 in the UFC all time. Considering the man is not a wrestler, and he learned that, added that to his skill set, that's insanely impressive. Mm-hmm. I have 2 questions for you. Is this the most vulnerable we've ever seen George St Pierre?
Yes, I think for sure, because there are all those questions that are coming in. I mean, that huge layoff, the ACL injury, we just don't know what's going to happen. And I mean, Carlos is a game opponent, but if he's fighting 100% GSP...
Let's talk about Carlos for a second. Carlos, 13 wins by knockout, 13 wins by submission. He's got more experience than George St Pierre. I mean, more fights, I guess I should say. Is this the most dangerous opponent that George St Pierre has fought?
I don't think so. I mean...
So you say Matt Hughes is more dangerous?
No, I'd say BJ Penn is.
Oh, come on. BJ Penn isn't even a welterweight. Serious. BJ Penn should be fighting at 145.
BJ Penn did beat Matt Hughes to become the welterweight champion.
I'm not saying BJ Penn's not great, but who do you think would win between BJ Penn and Carlos Condit?
Probably Carlos right now, but in their prime, I'd say definitely BJ Penn.
Carlos is big. He's a big welterweight.
Yeah.
He's got reach. I think he's the most dangerous opponent because not only does he have equal skills in standing and feet, and he does have the ability to brawl if he needs to. I think the Nick Diaz fight really showed something about him. Now, that's a very controversial fight, and you're going to get flamed one way or the other depending on what you say.
Yeah.
But the thing that no one can argue is that Carlos Condit went in there with a game plan, an unpopular game plan, but one that was specifically tailored to Diaz and to the unified rules and how MMA judges look at fights.
Yeah.
He outpointed Nick Diaz. Even with Nick Diaz cursing at him, slapping him, taunting him, he doggedly stuck to a game plan. And I think that shows that he is in the same stratosphere of GSP as a tactician, as a mentally tough fighter. Combine that with his younger, he's bigger, he's stronger, he's got just as much versatility in his game. I think this is GSP's toughest opponent.
Condit definitely is a very cerebral fighter. But I don't think he can stuff the takedown. I don't think he'll be able to do anything from the bottom. Nobody really has been able to do anything from the bottom. I mean, Matt Hughes got an armbar when George St Pierre said himself that he was looking at Matt Hughes as if he was an idol and really didn't even think he could win.
To put that into context, that was 8 years ago, and GSP was 23 years old.
Exactly. I mean, GSP, he has shown no weaknesses except for maybe a chin weakness, if you can really call it that, against Matt Serra. Personally, I think the only way that Carlos wins this fight is by knockout. I think he can do this, but he's got to find openings on GSP, and they're very hard to find. Jack Slack found a good hole in GSP, which was the weakness of the body shot. Matt Serra exposed it, and also BJ Penn exposed it in their first fight.
Jack Slack, by the way, is a MMAshare.com contributor. He goes by the name of Crazy B on the forum there.
Yeah. GSP often leaves his midsection exposed when he's going for his kicks and his strikes. Condit has to take advantage of that. If he can wear out GSP and get a TKO late in the fight. We've seen Carlos has an impeccable gas tank, probably just as good as Nick Diaz, which is quite fantastic. GSP also has a really great gas tank, but if he does get those punches to the midsection over and over, he will gas. But personally, I think GSP will make Carlos victim to his incredible work ethic, his awesome pace, and his power. And another thing Carlos possibly could do is maybe do that teep kick to the knee that he's been really fond of in his last few fights.
Also known as a leg jab.
Yeah, I guess. He's become fond of that, and he could possibly honestly re-injure GSP's knee in the fight, which, I mean, that'd be interesting to see. I hope it doesn't happen. It just would be not a very exciting way for him to win the fight by injury.
I'm going to paint one of two possible scenarios. Here's how I think Carlos Condit wins. I think he can win. GSP's not the same GSP. If he's slower, that affects his striking, his takedowns, his takedown defense. It affects everything. The other scenario is this. GSP comes back absolutely fully healthy. This is the scenario that happens. GSP gets in there, everyone thinks it's going to be an even fight, and GSP dominates him and reminds us exactly how great he is. That's more what I'm leaning towards than GSP's knee not being fixed.
I think GSP's going to win this fight, being the better fighter everywhere. In my opinion, he's the better striker, he's the better wrestler, he's better on the ground, better submissions, and he's, in my opinion, one of the greatest fighters of all time. He's definitely up there. I'd say GSP all the way, probably by decision.
And Condit doesn't hold a candle to GSP's athleticism. In fact, I don't know, there's no one in the division that does.
No, not even close. I don't even think there's probably the only person, in my opinion, that comes close to George St Pierre's athleticism is John Jones.
I'd say Aldo.
I don't think so. I really don't think so. You don't see Aldo doing gymnastics just to train for a fight. George St Pierre, the way he covers distance with his takedowns and his jabs and his strikes is second to none, and that all comes from his explosiveness. We won't know if that explosiveness is still there after the knee surgery, but we'll see.
Aldo makes other featherweights look slow.
Yeah, he does.
So you've got GSP, I've got GSP. Joining us on the line with another perspective on the GSP Condit fight is another friend of ours from MMAshare.com. He is well-versed in combat sports with experience in boxing, jiu-jitsu, and battle axes. It's our buddy, Eirik Brostad, affectionately known as Brostan, joining us on the fight. How you doing, Eirik?
Hi, doing great. Middle of the night here, so a bit sleepy.
That's great. You're a trooper. Appreciate the sacrifice. Looking at GSP versus Condit, what do you see? How does GSP win this fight?
I guess he would do basically what he always does, unless the injury really has maimed him. Condit's takedown defense hasn't been the greatest. It shouldn't be an issue unless the ACL tear has really affected his leg. But I can't really see GSP going into a title fight unless he's 100%.
He has taken off 560 plus days. You have to assume that he is absolutely ready. They say most ACL injuries take a year to recover. He's taken almost a full year since he pulled out. Actually, more than a year. He pulled out on October 17th in his fight with Condit before. Conversely, how do you see Carlos Condit winning this fight?
The only way I can see Condit winning is by knockout. GSP has only been submitted once by Matt Hughes, I can't really see Condit winning a 5-round decision against GSP. Maybe the first round. As soon as GSP finds his range, there's just no winning like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th round.
So you're saying that really Condit's only chance is a flash knockdown?
Not necessarily a flash knockdown. First 3 rounds he could win by knockout.
Who do you have winning the fight?
I have GSP by submission, 3rd round.
And if GSP wins this fight, who do you think? Do you think he'll get the super fight with Anderson Silva, or do you think it'll be Nick Diaz?
Well, Anderson Silva has said that he is willing to take the fight, so I guess the UFC would push him to fight Silva. There's really not a lot of fighters left for him, except for the Silva fight. But then again, that's assuming that the ACL tear isn't a career-ending injury.
I'm really looking forward to that fight. Hopefully that happens. I had a couple questions for you, Brustan. We talked about it the other day, but how is the mixed martial arts scene in Norway, and do you think it could grow?
It really has potential to grow. The biggest problem here is that both MMA and boxing are illegal in Norway. It's just that 2 years ago, MMA was legal to broadcast. Before that was illegal for TV as well. So we just recently got Bellator running like 2 a.m. at the night.
Do you guys have pay-per-views, or do you get it free on their website, or is there a small fee? How does that work?
I used to pay for the pay-per-view on UFC. It got banned. I don't know if it's up again. I spoke to the UFC about it via mail, and they said that the Norwegian government banned the pay-per-view.
So John Olive Einemo was really your guys' only top star. He recently retired. Hopefully it grows.
You know, we have a fighter in the UFC, a rising submission fighter.
Who is that?
Simeon Thoresen.
One thing I did notice is that when you look at wrestling medals, which is I think the best, as Joe Rogan always says, wrestling is the best foundation to come into mixed martial arts. When you look at wrestling medals in the Olympics per capita, Scandinavia is always really, really high. I don't know if that's so much true in Norway as it is in the other 2 countries, but at least back in the 50s, there was a fairly strong wrestling tradition in Scandinavia. Is that still there?
No. You see most the Nordic fighters coming out in the UFC and other big scenes, they aren't really wrestlers. They're either submission fighters or stand-up fighters.
If combat sports is illegal in Norway, obviously they have to leave the country. Do they mostly go to Holland?
No, most people in Norway go to Britain and Scotland and Ireland to fight, and some go to Finland.
Well, Eirik, certainly appreciate you jumping on with us. Do you have any other final thoughts before we let you go?
We're looking forward to the GSP fights. Been a long time coming, and I really don't like the GSP Anderson Silva fight.
I love it.
You know, I hate it.
It's certainly a fight that GSP's not meant to win. He is the smaller fighter in every aspect: reach, size, weight. He's at a severe disadvantage, and if he even takes Anderson to a decision, I think that would be a significant victory on GSP's part.
Oh, GSP will win. I'm telling you, if that fight happens, GSP will win.
Here we go. All right. Thank you, Eirik.
Yeah, no problem.
See you, buddy.
See ya.
Bye.
Well, that's it. That's our review of the UFC 154 card. I did make a little mistake that Derek was kind enough to point out off air. Obviously, the Facebook card comes before the FX card. Yeah. That's who we've got picked. Let us know who you think's going to win. Also, don't forget, we need help naming our podcast. The Toctagon isn't really making me that excited, although Victoria's Secret does elicit a reaction that I'm not sure is the one we're looking for. Other than that, we will be back after the show to give you a review of all the action in 154. Until then, this is Lucky Rob saying goodbye.
And Derek signing off. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.